Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Time for the Monday show. I'm Andrew Musgrove. This week, however, as you can see, I'm not joined by Aaron Stokes as he's off on yet another holiday. But fear not, the Mirror's Simon Bird is back. Simon was on last week as he provided the season preview and has kindly stepped in again to help out as we look back on Newcastle's open day victory over Southampton at St James's Park. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective as the side reorganised, as Fabian Schar was sent off, and they went on to win the game 1-0. We look back on the victory. Was it a red card? United's approach after the dismissal, and who stood out for us. We'll also talk about the transfer window and what we hope is going to happen in the next few days. Please remember to give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Leave us a rating and review on the audio platform. Let's get on with the show. Simon, welcome back. Have you had a good weekend?
Yeah, been working all weekend. So obviously the Newcastle game and so the Sunderland game, which people on here won't want to hear about. It was 4-0 to Sunderland and they were pretty good. So maybe we get the derbies back next season if they get promoted.
Yes, do you know what? I think I'm in the minority, but I do miss the derbies. So I did enjoy last January and I would like to see them back. But yeah, and we'll not talk too much about Sunderland. Before we get into the game and look back on Newcastle's win over Southampton, I think it's a good opportunity to announce that you're going to become a weekly contributor to the podcast. Every Wednesday starting next month, you're going to hear from Simon right here on the Everything is Black and White podcast. We haven't yet come up with a title. Maybe we'll go with something like, which one of you is Simon Bird? And incorporate that wonderful quote of Joelinton. I'm sure you might come up with a better title, Simon.
We'll try and get a better one than that, I think. Yeah, it was a long time ago. It was almost, 16 years ago? I'm still getting it every day almost on Twitter. So thanks for that.
Yes, if you guys have got any ideas about a title or so, get in touch with me. But you're looking forward to coming on every week, Simon? We're looking forward to having you.
It's going to be good. I like chatting about football. I think I'll obviously like writing about it as well. But sometimes you can get sort of wider points out and discuss things a little bit more with a bit more nuance and a bit more detail when you're on the podcast here with you guys. So it's a great opportunity to explain things a bit more, explain where the stories have come from, stories behind the interviews we get on a Saturday or in midweek. And any little like kind of details which we've spotted, which hopefully we'll come on to today as well. So yeah, it's gonna be good every Wednesday. Tune in.
Yeah,
that's what they say. Smash like and what is it? Subscribe or something.
Yeah, the thumbs up button is really important if you're watching on YouTube. So I'm sure as you come on every week, we'll get more thumbs up. We'll get on to the game now. I think it's fair to say that it was a game of a bit of temper. Newcastle United, as we said, 1-0 winners over Southampton, thanks to a goal from Joelinton. Not the best quality, but before we get into the final details of the game, I guess the 3 points, no matter how it looks on the eye, is all that matters.
I mean, it's just 3 points from your first game, relieves a lot of pressure, makes the league table look really deceptively good after one game, and they just had to get over the line. I mean, it's quite remarkable that they did go with 10 men, win a game like that, and held out for an hour. And we'll go on the stats and stuff later. But yeah, there was just one little detail which I spotted when during injury time, when Eddie Howe was just to highlight the importance of it. When Eddie Howe was trying to put Willock on, he was sort of geeing him up and saying, "I'm sorry, couldn't put you on," but and he was saying, "This is massive," right in Joe Willock's face to try and get him G'd up and go on in the holding midfield role. He didn't get on eventually, but I think just seeing that exchange really close to the dugout, because we sit just behind it in the press box, kind of illustrate how important and what that win meant to everyone. It's massive, like Eddie Howe said.
It probably means a little bit more having to work your socks off, really, as opposed to just rolling over an opponent. When you've had to really have your back against the wall and come up with all 3 points, it probably does matter that little bit more to get that victory.
Yeah, I think the manner of it, and kind of like there's ways to win, and everyone turned up thinking it, hoping for a 5-1 like the start of last season, and Newcastle being on the front foot and squeezing the life out of the opposition, scoring a few goals. But it kind of was the exact opposite of that. You go down to 10 men, it's still 0-0. Southampton were looking dangerous, and we're half decent. We're really good on the ball, actually, more than half decent. So to come away with a win, having been 0-0 and having played an hour with 10 men, is really remarkable. And it kind of highlights the other qualities that they're going to need at times of in difficult times this season, of the sheer will to win and the desperation to get over the line and the game management. Eddie Howe spoke of squeezing the midfield 3, Joelinton, Longstaff and Bruno, you really brought them in tight in the middle, and the winger tucked in as well, just to squeeze all the the life out of the game, so Southampton couldn't go through the middle. So there's little details like that. They've got through a really difficult game with 10 men. When they're 11 men and they're hanging on to a 1-0 lead, they'll have extra confidence to do it against probably better sides than Southampton. So just the manner of the way they did it is kind of a really good early test about the spirit and the will to win and the determination. And most fans will have noticed they were out on their feet virtually at the end of the game, especially Bruno. He was doing tackles and then just falling flat on his back. So and Anthony Gordon, they all put a massive shift in, which is really good to see. I think they'll get fitter and quicker and sharper, and we'll see better games. But it was a really, really spirited start.
No, it was. Let's talk about the big talking point then, and that is Fabian Schär's red card. Ben Brereton Diaz running over, shoving Fabian Schär to the floor, and the defender reacted by leaning into the striker, who embarrassingly fell to the floor. Was it soft? Yes, but it was stupid from Fabian Schär. He shouldn't have allowed Diaz to wind him up. And Diaz just kind of played the game and got the man sent off. It's a horrible thing to say, but that's what happened. He played the game, Diaz fell to the floor, and Schär got the red card. But can Newcastle United really have any arguments, Simon?
Well, Eddie Howe was sort of wondering about watching it again and seeing if it could appeal at the end of the game. But I don't think that's really going to be an avenue. VAR checked it. It wasn't a head. You couldn't really describe it as a headbutt. It was more like a leading in with his forehead. It was stupid because Schär had done his job. He'd been smashed from behind. He'd drawn the foul. Brereton Diaz, I thought, was excellent for the first half hour. He was really good and hard to handle, peeling off onto the fullback and winning headers and linking play up. He was really good. So he was clearly giving them Livramento and Schär a hard time on that right hand side of the defence. Schär had done his job. He'd drawn the foul. Pretty much thought, I thought that's how it was going to unfold. But he got up, and I don't mind the first shove. If you've been smashed by someone, get up, give him a shove, and give him a warning. That's fine. That level of aggression is fine. But then to go back at him again, and you could see it unfolding in front of your eyes. You knew there was going to be big trouble as soon as you go head to head. You've just got to back off. You just got to swallow your pride, not let the red mist happen. And I know it wasn't really red mist. It was a leading into, but there was contact. You can slow it down and make it out that Brereton Diaz's head came in as well. And if you really do a super slow-mo. So in normal speed and slightly slow motion, I think the ref probably had no choice really to do it, to send him off. If it was the other way around and it happened to a Newcastle striker, if Isaac had done that and someone had lent in on him, you'd be baying for a sending off. So it was one of those that Newcastle fans, adamant and furious. Yes, it was soft. Yes, he went down, like he was poleaxed, and he wasn't, and it was cheap. But you probably can't complain about it in the end. And I think Schär will learn from it, and I think he'll have to keep his cool a bit better, really, when he gets back. 3 game, but it's expensive though, isn't it? It's a 3-game ban. Violent conduct. Kind of mildly aggressive conduct with your forehead, but if he's done for violent conduct, that's a 3-game ban, and it's quite costly, really. Especially given
I was going to say, anything more to read into Fabian Schär's reaction? Like, was it just he got wound up by Diaz and that's all it is? Or do you think maybe the speculation with Marc Guehi maybe got to him a little bit? Because it was a really overreaction from Fabian Schär. Like you say, he'd done his job by getting Diaz to bundle them to the floor in the first place. He had his little shove, and then he leans in. Okay, not a headbutt in the strictest terms of the definition of a headbutt, but stupid enough to get himself sent off. Was it just in that moment, you think, or is there something more to perhaps read into it?
There could be more to it. Obviously we've seen Fabian Schar play for years now, and he is like one of the coolest guys, probably on and off the pitch. Incredibly handsome. He really never loses his cool, never says anything stupid. Always looks like he's really chilled out on the ball. And for him to do that is kind of weird. It's not in his character. We know it's not in his character. He's just like a cool, chilled out guy, very quiet guy. So you do wonder whether he's just at the back of his head mentally being affected by huge speculation that Newcastle are looking for an upgrade in the right centre back position, his position. all week he'll be reading and checking about Marc Guehi and the big bid they're putting in for him, which, you spend 70 million on a player, you don't stick him on the bench. You probably put Fabian Schar out the team probably immediately. So you do wonder whether in the back of his mind he's kind of thinking, I've got to prove myself here. I've got to be tough. I've got to be aggressive. I've got to really be on the front foot. The crowd like a bit of aggression. I'm going to show them. And you do wonder whether that's kind of tipped him over the line in that reaction. It's really unfortunate. So I think he's a really good player. But, I think everyone's got to rise to the challenge. I think he rose to it with a bit more aggression than he needed to. When the club's going to try and sign a new player in your position, you've got to step up there. But I think you just over-egged it.
Do you think that the red card focuses the mind in the transfer window when it comes to the chase and conclusion of Marc Guehi? It doesn't matter which way it ends. We just need to know whether he's signing or not, and if not, they can move on. But given now Shar's missing for 3 games, does it make it that little bit more important to get something done at centre-back?
It does probably. Although, you're signing someone for 70 million, it's more of a long-term plan than because someone's been suspended. We were joking as soon as it happened. We all had our head in our hand, thought that's another 20 million on the Guehi asking price. Palace will be sitting there laughing that's happened, and that Newcastle were already pretty desperate to get the deal done on Thursday, Friday, and then look what's happened. They've lost their right-sided centre back. Thankfully, Emil Kraft came in and did a brilliant job deputising, and he's probably not the long-term replacement, but he can certainly tuck in there and play right-sided centre-back and reads the game and just got so many great blocks in with Livramento and the others. So yeah, it does increase. It will be focused minds. I'm sure there's meetings going on right now, St James's Park or the training ground to work out their strategy, to find out where Crystal Palace are going with this, because they need it done. You can't faff around for another 3 or 4 days wondering if you're going to get Marc Guehi and then have a week to turn it around and get another target lined up. So they need that one, a line drawn under that, all the deals done in the next 2 or 3 days, I would have thought.
And Marc Guehi played for Southampton. Southampton played for Crystal Palace over the weekend. He was their captain. But it's fair to say he didn't look like a £70 million centre-back. And whether it was just one of those opening day performances, or whether the rumour of a move to Newcastle United has maybe got the better of him as well. Do you think it was a bit of a risk for Palace to play him?
Well, it's a big statement that they're prepared to keep their centre back, so they're probably going to sell one of them. But it was a big statement to player who they could have the day before banked 70 million quid for, or 60 million plus whatever the add-ons are, and actually stick him into a game at risk of injury. So it shows it's kind of brave from them. It's kind of belligerent, quite a good negotiating tactic as well, to say, well, we're playing him, we're not bothered by this. And I did see the clips of the goals that they conceded, and it just shows how much of defending is a team game, and if you're getting pulled, you don't know whether to come forward to do the challenge, or you're covering back behind you. He's kind of caught between two decisions there on one of the goals. So yeah, it's a team game. I don't think Newcastle are going to be put off by like him. Palace conceding 2 goals in this deal, but they might be put off by the dithering and the price going up and Palace playing hardball. At some point, they've got to walk away from the Guehi deal, and if they can't get it done. And Eddie Howe said that on Friday. I said to them, look, if the price gets too high, because it was that Palace were pushing their luck a little bit, would you walk away? And Howe said they would. They would look at other targets. So it's not beyond the realms that they could get it done in the next 5 minutes, or they might walk away tomorrow. We just don't know at the minute. It's a big strategy decision at the top of St James's Park, probably right up to the Saudis, because that's a lot of money to spend on a player. He's not really, really young. He's at the top of his value, probably. It's kind of an unusual signing for Newcastle, where they might spend 40 million on someone a bit younger with a bit more potential. They might go in for Joe Gomez. He's now out of the Liverpool squad and assessing his options. Who knows what could happen there? But he's a bit older, obviously. So yeah, interesting times in that position, but some big decisions to make in the next few hours.
Howe was asked on Saturday after the game about the transfer market, and he said, of course, we're looking into the transfer market. We've got a period of time left, and we'll see what we can do. Could we do something in the market? Possibly, but conditions have to be right for us. As I've said all along, we can't do something that goes against the long-term good of the football club. So we'll try to make the right decision. And I guess Simon, what he's getting at there is the price tag. It is £70 million plus the right condition. And for people now in our comments live on YouTube, they think it's overpriced for Guehi.
Yeah, it's getting that way, isn't it? I mean,
It seems like Simon has disappeared. Technical issues yet again. It's the second week running, so I do apologise about this. Let me just see if I can get Simon back into the room. Bear with me. He's left, so he's going to come back in. Of course, we're just talking about Marc Guehi then, with a £70 million for him is overpriced. Let me know in the comments. Quite a few of you already have done and seem to share the opinion that Marc Guehi at 70 million plus is overpriced. But if it's not going to be Marc Guehi, who is it going to be? Name your alternatives, because of course transfer window shuts when is it, the 30th of August, so they haven't got long at all to find an alternative to go elsewhere. Simon mentioned a few of them there. Of course, you have Malak Tio at AC Milan. He's another one who Newcastle United were interested in and could go back in. Last week, their manager admitted they still have to sell players, so potentially he could be one that Newcastle United could snap up. You know, you've got Trevor Chalobah at Chelsea as well, not included in the squad. Could he be a man that Newcastle United turn to? Certainly, they need to draw a line under this chase for Marc Guehi because it's going on far too long. As Gary says there, Tio doesn't want to leave AC Milan. So obviously that's a sticking point there. But are there actually that many alternatives to Guehi? And is it a case that actually he's probably just the best option? And even though it's a little bit overpriced for most, do you just have to accept it, pay it, and then build your team around him? Let me know in the comments, because I do think time is not in Newcastle United's favour right now at all. And someone has just said that, does the transfer window not shut on September the 1st? No, it will close on Friday, August the 30th, 2024 at 11 p.m. Just going to double check that, but that's what I'm reading here right now. Yeah, the window will close on August 30th at 11 p.m. In England and 11:30 in Scotland. I'm going to read through some of your comments right now. Where I'm answering Southampton just didn't have the quality to put chances away. And I think, yeah, that's probably the difference between a top Premier League side and a Championship side is that quality to take advantage of the one man advantage that they do have. Simon's back in the room now. Welcome him back in. Welcome back, Simon. You okay?
Well, thanks very much. Virgin Media Wi-Fi, middle of Newcastle, just cut out completely. I mean, who knows what happened there? Sorry, lie.
Other internet providers are available and probably also have similar issues, just to be clear. We were talking there about the price tag and whether Guehi was overpriced. And I think our luck is hit again. It looks like Simon's frozen once more. So I'll try. Yeah, we're not having much luck here on the Everything's Black and White podcast with our internet providers. Last week, me and Aaron were kicked out of the studio because of the internet in the office. I was worried about my own internet, but it seems like it's Simon's internet which is the issue. He'll come back in, hopefully. I'll read through some more of your comments. Let me just pick up some. Now, a lot of people are talking about the fact that Palace are moving towards signing a centre-back. Also, though, Anderson is a man who is attracting a lot of attention. Of Fulham have placed a bid. Newcastle United have previously been interested in him as well. And I'm a big fan of Anderson, actually, Joachim Anderson. I think he's a really good centre-back. He's probably got A little less pace than maybe Guehi, but the way he can ping a ball is very like Fabian Schar. He's a little bit older than Guehi, though. Of course, is going to probably cost less than Guehi, substantially less. And I think that is the issue for Newcastle United right now. You can't say Crystal Palace letting both go. It's going to be one or the other, because also Palace have lost Michael Olise as well. Eze has been linked as well to an exit. So, after their great finish to last season, they're losing a lot of top players. Are they going to lose? Well, they're definitely not going to lose both centre backs. So it's probably maybe a race with Fulham to see who can match the price tag of their respective target. And if Fulham managed to secure a deal for Anderson before Newcastle secured a deal for Guehi, then that might put the final nail in the coffin of that chase. We've got people here saying, where our man says, Guehi looked slow yesterday. Wasn't impressed at all. Get someone else in my opinion, which is, again, it's a matter of opinion. I just wonder whether the speculation got to his head, and maybe he's thinking about this move. He wants this move. He's very open to the move. Of course, captain in Palace will be an amazing feeling for him. But was his mind elsewhere? We don't know. We can only speculate on that. Simon's back in the room. You're back in. You're back. You're good.
Well, I hope so. Maybe for another 30 seconds. Anyway, what were we talking about? We were talking about whether Marc Guehi
was talking about whether 70. Yes. And do you think he is at 70 million?
At 70 million, Marc Guehi looks like it's on the brink of being overpriced. 60, 65 looks like that's what you pay for an England centre half, and a very good one at that. But I mean, is he Harry Maguire class when he went to Man U for 80 plus? How long is he going to be in that England team? Is he going to be the mainstay of the England team now? I don't think he's not a huge guy, so he's not got the aerial presence of to defend set pieces that many have. So you do wonder. I think 60, 70 million is now. It's already a club record bid for Newcastle. It's on the brink of making people take a deep breath and think again and think, is there someone younger and cheaper with more value potential, or the other, or is this the deal we really push on for because he's so essential to what Eddie Howe wants to achieve? If you're Eddie Howe and you've been part of a collaborative process in choosing this target, and presumably he's right up there number one if they're spending that much money, I would think he'll still be pushing for it, because that's the player you want, and managers have a shelf life. He's under pressure to deliver this year. He's going to want everyone he can. The top. He's not building 5-10 years ahead. He wants people now to make this season a big success. So I can assume Eddie Howe is kind of pushing for it, but obviously collectively the club are not going to go too much higher. I wouldn't have thought, because that's going to have knock-on effects, kind of scuppering a pursuit of a really top-notch right back or right winger. So yeah, the other thing to consider is at the minute, I mean, Eddie Howe, alluding to that last point I made about Eddie Howe wanting the best squad he can have. He said on Friday, Eddie Howe said on Friday that he's under no pressure to sell now. So Almiron, Callum Wilson, the likes of those, for Trippier as well, who probably elder players who they could cash in on now. He wants to keep them, and he's saying, I'm under no pressure to sell. They will have to sell in January if they don't sell now, though. So he's thinking short term as well as long term. He's thinking, I need those guys in my squad, big arms of love round the squad that they've got now, to keep them in and have a good start to the season, and then see what unfolds in January. He wants the best squad he can have till then. So that's a big decision.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that as well, though, because I think in an ideal world you would see Newcastle cashing in on Miguel Almiron and Kieran Trippier, but it just doesn't seem like there's the suitors there for them at all. So it's, in a way, it's quite easy for Eddie Howe to say that, knowing that actually there's no one there to buy them anyway. And we've got a few questions on exits later in the show. Stephen asks, do you think we were really looking hard at Guehi before the Euros, or has his performance pushed him to the top of the list?
I'm pretty sure Newcastle have had him right on that list before the Euros, and they'll have known his contract situation, 2 years left at Palace, and he's on the brink of being, a good game against Slovakia is not going to make Newcastle spend 70 million on a centre half. they'll have had him right in there in the scouting reports and the data analysis and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of move isn't made just because he got called up in the Euros. So it must have been on the radar for a while.
And you mentioned their alternatives. You've mentioned a few names, but is there a case that there just isn't that many alternatives out there? I mean, look, they looked like they were going to go for Theo AC Milan, as someone's mentioned in the comments. He didn't seem too keen on the move. And you look elsewhere and you think, well, actually, who is out there that's better value for money? Who's better than Guehi? I mean, you look at Trevor Chalobah at Chelsea. He's not going to have a future at Chelsea, but how much is he going to cost you? Is he at the level of Guehi? It might just be a case from Newcastle United point of view. You look at all the options and say, yes, he's very expensive, but he's actually the best available defender. And we're not really looking at the price tag. We're looking at who's available right here, right now to improve the squad. And he is at the top of the list.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's a priority position. And I think Eddie Howe's big mission this year is to obviously keep them free scoring as they were last year. But he said on Friday when we had a detailed conversation with him that they've got to defend better. They've got to be more of a unit. They've got to be more athletic. They've got to really tighten up and concede fewer goals at the back. And that's his big mission this year, is to plug it like that. So yeah, defender is the priority to strengthen that position, especially with the two massive injuries they've got. I mean, you think, we wonder if Botman could come back quickly or Lascelles from their injuries they've got. Eddie said on Saturday that those two are only halfway through their recovery at the minute, which is really, it's not a setback or anything, but it's just their long injury recoveries. Probably November time when we'll see those kind of challenging out on the grass for consideration again. So that's really tough. There's no quick comeback from a knee ligament injury, even though surgery is so good these days. So yeah, they need someone in at right centre back. They could probably muddle through, and Kraft might have this half season of his life. We just don't know. But they don't want to be put in that position. They want to, and also the club kind of needs. I know it's been a quiet transfer window, but we're 3 years into the takeover now, and it was meant to be a rocket ship launching Newcastle off into a brave new world of challenging for things, and they've barely. Well, they've spent on Lewis Hall. They've got a free transfer in Lloyd Kelly. They've done weird stuff with the keeper coming from Notts Forest, but there's not a big signing coming, and that for a club with Newcastle ambitions and supposedly Newcastle's trajectory of being contenders again, that's just not good enough. We've got to give them leeway because it's a couple of weeks before the end of the window, so all those caveats, but they've not got their main business done, and they were a game into the season, and we're still wondering who it's going to be, and that's just in their one big target position. They've got two target positions, so tough times, and it could be one of those transfer windows where all the dominoes start to fall, and it's a traditional old school transfer window when stuff's happening at the last minute, which hasn't happened in the last few years.
Well, given the rest of the work in the market, other teams haven't really spent big either, so maybe we are going to see that in the last week or so of the window. Andrew Carter says, all our eggs in one basket is not good for us. But do we think that is the case at Newcastle United? Like they're pinning all the hopes on Guehi? Or when we say they're looking at alternatives, will they be able to move quickly if they decide this afternoon that it's gone too far with Guehi, we're done, and they'll be able to move at the click of a finger?
Well, like scouting and player recruitment doesn't work in terms of having all your eggs in one basket. We've seen managers' rooms, not at Newcastle, but other clubs, where there's a transfer war room, and they know when one player's going to be moved out of the first team, and then they've got there's the list there of 5, 6, 8, way down the list of potential replacements who they're scouting. So it's not all eggs in one basket. Newcastle will have multiple players in that position who they've looked at, and they'll know through their agents what their position is contractually, their wages, all that kind of stuff, all the data. So they could turn on a sixpence and look for someone else and decide on number 2 target. The trouble is, this has been so public now that if they turn away and sign someone else, we know it's not their first choice. They're under a bit more scrutiny. We'll be sort of looking at that deal with a bit of skepticism as well. So yeah, but it is so public, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of unusual in the way Newcastle have done transfers over the last few years, in that transfers have happened, but maybe like a couple of days' notice, foreign press have got wind of it, and they've told us, and this one's been so so public, probably because Palace are driving it and want to look clever. Let's make that clear. I mean, Parish was given, the Palace chairman or owner was given interviews last week actually about the transfer. I mean, that's pretty unusual for a chairman to be talking about a massive transfer. So they've been public. There's stuff been coming out saying bids have been rejected. 4 bids have been rejected. That's been disputed. So it's all a bit messy in public, really. And Newcastle don't usually deal like that. And that's not the best way of getting transfers done.
I suppose the other issue with it as well, if they walk away and they do go to other alternatives, those selling clubs of those alternatives are likely to turn around and say, well, we know you've got this amount of money. According to Steve Parish, you've got this amount of money because they say they rejected that bid. So it leaves them in a rather unfavorable negotiating position when it comes to other alternatives, so that cheaper alternatives, because they'll just say, well, actually, we know you've got that money, so we'll charge you £10 million more. So it's a bit of a mess. But also, I just think, as you alluded to there, Simon, if this is Eddie Howe's top target, get it done, because it just gives everyone that boost. Eddie Howe gets the man they want. Newcastle United get a really good player, and I think pulling out now with a week or so to go to the transfer market, it'll just make the fan base a little bit nervous about what's to come down the road.
Yeah. I mean, Palace are selling 2. I've got offers for 2 of their centre backs at the minute. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they ended up selling the cheaper one. His partner, is it Anderson? I can't remember. Anderson. If they just basically cut that off and end up selling the cheaper one, or if they keep them both together right till the end and they have the option of selling either. If the other one goes, then you could kind of assume that they're not going to sell both their centre halves. It is suggested elsewhere that Palace have got a replacement lined up for whoever goes, but they can't sell both. Parish has said they can't sell both. So as long as they haven't sold one of them, then the Guehi deal's kind of still bubbling, isn't it? So yeah, we'll have to.
Well, I mentioned that when you were offline there, because there's a few people in the comments saying, actually, I prefer Yaki Manison to Marc Guehi, cheaper than him, and he looks quality. And Newcastle were linked to him not so long ago. But as you say, it is probably a race against Fulham. If Fulham match the asking price for Anderson, then that kills off the deal for Guehi, because they're not going to sell both. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. We'll talk a bit more about transfers later in the show. I just want to pick up on a few points from the game on Saturday. I think it's fair to say that Newcastle was second best, Simon, up until that sending off. It just hadn't clicked, and Southampton were the better side. But, with Schar sent off in such circumstances, an injustice in the mind of everyone, it really got the crowd going, and it kind of backfired for Southampton, because the St James's Park faithful are a different beast when they feel hard done by.
Yeah, there was the sending off, and it really ignited the crowd. I mean, the kind of frustration and annoyance that came through from the terraces was deafening, really. And then you had that followed up, the sending off followed up by Sean Longstaff's tackle, which really set the tone for the next 55 minutes, when he smashed Brereton Diaz in a perfectly fine, fair way, proper old school retribution there, but in a fair way. So well done, Sean Longstaff, for crunching him, and also getting the crowd feeling even more on the feeling of injustice. So, but it needed that lift. It needed that lift. And one of Eddie Howe's things this year is getting everyone working against something. People writing them off or doubting them, and he looks to be kind of fostering a bit of a siege mentality and that was a perfect way to do it, although you wouldn't want to go deliberately lose a player. So it was gritty and messy, and Southampton had 70 odd. I think it's the lowest percentage of possession that Newcastle have had for a win under Eddie Howe, and they played the Man City and all those teams, but to have that against Southampton was slightly worrying. But I think a few of them looked really tired, not quite as sharp as usual, like Anthony Gordon. And I think in 2 or 3 games' time there'll be a kind of a better flow about the whole thing, or you'd hope so anyway. I thought the first 10 minutes were good, in that Newcastle were really on the front foot, and it was that old tactic of squeezing Southampton into their own box and making them play, and then 2 or 3 of them pouncing on the press. And I thought that worked, but I think they kind of did run out of steam quite quickly when they were trying to do that. And that's what Newcastle have got to get this year, is the ability to do that and really be forceful, also the ability to sit back. And when they sat back, they had like a 4-5-1, and the wingers tucked in, and that looked pretty solid. So they were kind of comfortable in both situations, although they needed some pretty spectacularly good blocks to keep a few of those shots out from Southampton.
Yeah, I was just really impressed about the way or how they went about reorganizing so quickly, and then everyone buying into it, kind of accepting it was going to be a lot of legs, backs against the wall. And it was just the way they were so organized against Southampton, having that man advantage. And you mentioned the tackle with Sean Longstaff. I was quite glad he got to the player first, because if you watch the replay, you can see Bruno absolutely pelting it down. And I've got a sneaky suspicion that Bruno was getting none of the ball had he got to Diaz before Sean. But also the other thing, I don't know if you noticed the coming together in the 10 seconds after that tackle, where I have to admit, I think Sean did more of a headbutt to Diaz than Fabian Schar did. But he was very lucky, actually, given the referee.
The still frames actually suggest that Sean was several degrees more into the face of Burton Diaz, but I mean, the ref's not going to send off 2 players for that, so he was probably pushing his luck to the limits there. But it was a great move, and I thought Sean Longstaff did a really good job. The legs, the tackling, the shuffling the ball around. He was, all his strengths were there to see. And now Tonali's got to be able to add that to the team as well, because if Newcastle are going to be a kind of revived team with energy, then the one question mark about Tonali is, has he got that tenacious non-stop running power that Longstaff has in the same position? So Sean's proved that he's got it. Now it's up to Tonali to show that too, in terms of the whole system that they're playing.
Yeah, I thought Sean was absolutely fantastic. He's coming for a bit of stick over the last few months. Of course, he's spoken about it as well, but I thought he was absolutely brilliant on Saturday alongside Bruno and Joelinton. But it is Joelinton that we've got to speak about now, because he rightly grabs the headlines. He looks like a man who's making up for lost time. He was an absolute beast in the middle of the park, absolutely colossal, just making up ground with ease, winning the ball, intercepting, then turning and attacking. He's doing the job of 2 midfielders at times, and of course he scores the winning goal as well. I think he's going to be absolutely key for Newcastle United going forward. I know that people talk about Bruno Simon, but I think Joelinton would be harder to replace than Bruno in this side. A man of the match performance from him, and he's only going to get better as well.
Yeah, he looked like he had a full pre-season, looked like he'd been itching to be fully fit and get out on the pitch. And his aggression, and because we seemed quite close on the left side of the pitch during the first half, and the one-on-one duels that he had, he's battling and he's shugging players off, and I think of all the Newcastle players, he's the one player who you wouldn't want to be marking. You wouldn't want all those one-on-one duels to be against, because he's so strong and he's so physical. He's so tall. I mean, I'm quite tall. He's up there. We sat with him in after the training in Germany in the pre-season when we went over there for interviews, and he came in with his his sleeveless top on, and he's like a not a weightlifter, because that implies bulkiness. He's lean and he's rippling and he's enormous. And I wouldn't like to be fighting him. I mean, really, on the pitch, he's awesome. And couple that with his attitude and his determination, and then he added that look. It was quite a difficult bouncing ball that he got from Isaac when Isaac squared it to him, and he controlled it and managed to just calmly curl it in. And that's a finish that a few years ago he didn't have the kind of presence and calmness to do. So to score and be that combative in the game, he had to be the man of the match. He was wonderful, and I think if he's got that left side of midfield, of the midfield 3, battened down, and you just hope he can stay fit. I mean, he always used to stay fit despite being knocked around and tackled hard, and he always got up from pretty crunching tackles, and you thought, how's he got up from that? And I hope it's going to be one of those seasons from him, because Bruno described him as a brother and was paying tribute to him after the game and his work rate, and the two of them worked really, really well together.
They certainly do. And there was one moment in the second half against Southampton when there was a little fella, I can't remember who it was, and he gets the ball, and all you see is Joelinton just running towards him. He's got his back to Joelinton, and I just thought, oh my goodness me, I don't want to be in when he turns around, because Joelinton was just after absolutely everything. But it's interesting that you mentioned there the goal and how a few years ago you would have missed that, because that's what I've got written down here. Even when he switched into that midfield position, he became this kind of enforcer that no one predicted, but he's become this tank in the middle of the park. His defensive work's got better and better. He's carrying the ball better and better. There was still times when he got in front of goal and he just fluffed the chance. And you think, it's just not there. Is it ever going to be there in front of goal? There were moments against Tottenham last season when actually he scored a wonderful goal. And you think, okay, has he got it sorted? The next week, he misses a golden chance. But goals like that on Saturday, lovely cushion touch, holds his run, cushions the ball down and places it in the back of the net from 10, 12 yards. That's a difficult chance because a lot of people put that into the Gallagher. They put it into the stand. And I think if he can do that on a more consistent basis, add goals to his game, then we've got some midfielder. We've got some player right there.
Yeah, he already is, and he should. I mean, Bruno was appealing for him to be in the Brazil team when he's fit for October, for the games in October and for the World Cup ahead. And that is his target. He wants to go. We spoke to him in Germany, and his target is to play well for the next 2 years and stay fit and be in the Brazil team for the World Cup in America next time round, and have a really good couple of seasons at Newcastle. He's got his new contract, so he's settled. That's not to worry about. They've got their pay rise and their extended deals, so hopefully he can just be a really consistent player for Newcastle. And that's what you want. You want a consistent side with relationships built around on the left side and the right side, and you need all those things to be clicking. People to know each other's games to drag you through the really tight, crucial semi-finals and quarter-finals that hopefully they'll be playing in this season. So great. But Bruno was great as well. I mean, Bruno ran himself. He didn't look particularly mobile, Bruno. I don't know what you thought early on.
Yeah, I thought he looked a bit flat, but I thought throughout the pre-season he looked like, and I mean, I'm not one to talk, but he looked like he'd been carrying a little bit of weight, and he spoke about working the extra hours. But I did see a lot of stick from over the weekend, and that he was a bit off the pace. But I thought, especially in that second half, his trademark of winning fouls, which aren't really fouls, just conning the referee into giving the free kicks, was so important, running down the clock. And I think you mentioned there was one more when he was flat on his back. And they were the kind of fouls, especially in the last 10 minutes, which were just so important to Newcastle United getting 3 points. He also won 12 out of 17 duels, the most for Newcastle United. So right there in this kind of game, that shows you how important he was.
Yeah, it was massive. Early on, it was clear that it's like when he's getting box to box and he's striding out, the kind of usual flow. I mean, he's not the quickest anyway, but he gets box to box and he's okay. And he's run more yards than anyone in the Premier League last year. But you could tell he'd been on holiday just 3 weeks ago. I mean, if you look at his Instagram or Twitter or whatever it was, he was fishing in the ocean 3 weeks ago. So he's come back and he's played 95 minutes of a high intensity game again with 10 men on his own side, and he's lasted the full thing, and that'll do him loads of good. So he will get sharper and he will get fitter. And we asked him about that. I asked him about that fishing, the fishing trip 3 weeks ago, his last fling of his holiday, and he said, I was only catching little sea trout, and he put them all back. That's, you're after big fish this season, aren't you? Trying to set up an intro, and he didn't bite. But I thought he might be catching something more spectacular and big in the ocean than sea trout. But there we are. He's had a good holiday. He's back, and he looks. And he also, during that interview after the game with the newspapers, 2 or 3 newspapers, including Lee Ryder from the Chronicle, we asked him about his future, and he did once again say, that's all out of my hands, but I'm happy at Newcastle. I'm staying here. And he kind of put to bed again. And we've got to ask him every time, because that's what people ask us. He did put to bed the rumours about Man City or Arsenal or whoever. I think it's going to be pretty certain now that Bruno stays. He's going nowhere.
Which is good news. Anthony Gordon as well sparked a few comments after the game. Some saying he didn't look like he wanted to be here. I mean, I've got to say, Simon, I didn't get that feeling at all. I think he worked his socks off. There were times when he looked quite angry, actually, because he wasn't getting the ball. But it's just passion. I'm all for that. He just wants to pass at the right time. Of course, the game plan was totally torn up, but you could see him at times gesturing when the right pass didn't come to him. Then he had that burst of speed through the middle when I think the referee wrongly awarded a foul. I think Gordon was through, and I didn't think it was a foul then. I don't now, and I think he probably would have put the game to bed. But for me, he looked a little bit tired, a little bit off, but he didn't look like his mind was elsewhere. He looked like he was fighting for the shirt.
I think it's really harsh to equate Anthony Gordon being slightly off his best on Saturday in a real backs to the wall performance, and saying that you can equate that to him wanting to be away and having his head turned by Liverpool from the summer shenanigans. He turned out in the pre-season friendly 8 days before that, literally 2 training sessions into his pre-season, because he'd been away with the Euros, he'd had extra time off like Bruno, but he still played in that friendly the week before the season kicked off, and he scored a goal. And now that's not the actions of a player who is desperate to leave Newcastle. If Liverpool come in with 100 million, then there might be some conversations to be had in terms of, and also he, because of what's happening in the summer, and because he knows Liverpool will probably give him a pay rise if they wanted him, there's probably going to have to be a new contract on the table for Anthony Gordon, because there's only a couple of years left on his deal. So that'll be a kind of a priority after the window's finished. But to say that he was slightly off his game in a tough game, and because he's not trying, is rubbish. Anthony Gordon, when he gets on a pitch, buzzes around and demands and tries his heart out for whoever he's playing for.
Yeah, 100%. And the other man who was really impressive, and not just at half time in the tunnel, was Big Dan Burn. What a performance! Like, since he's gone to centre back, Simon, he's been absolutely brilliant. And on Saturday against Southampton, 11 defensive actions, the most clearances for Newcastle. And we've all been sat here thinking that his time in the starting 11 is probably going to come to an end sooner rather than later, because Lewis Hall's probably got that sewn up at left back, and if it's not Lewis Hall, probably Lloyd Kelly. And then at left side centre back, if Marc Guehi comes in, is he going to play there alongside Fabian Schar? Lloyd Kelly, when he's fit, is probably second choice there. Dan Burn, in the mind of most, on the bench, a good squad player. But performances like that on Saturday, it doesn't half get you thinking about him holding down that place for this season.
Well, he could. I mean, Botman's not there, not playing. Lloyd Kelly's going to be pressuring. He can play left centre back, so we'll pressure Dan Burn for that position. But Dan Burn is in possession and did nothing wrong. And he's kind of, when you're a centre back, you're less exposed than you are when to pace when you're a left back. I mean, and we saw last year when the team was a bit loose anyway defensively, that when a real athlete is sprinting at him, it's hard for anyone, but it's also hard for Dan Burn to turn, because he's 6'6" and all that. He's not slow. When you see him get him in his stride after 2 or 3 strides, he's not slow, but he's less exposed and is a huge aerial presence when he's playing left centre back, and that's probably going to be his preferred position this year. It looks like Lewis Hall's going to get the nod at the minute. Lloyd Kelly's pushing for that left back slot as well, and will probably get a run. Dan Burn is probably slotting in there as more of a centre back. I don't know if Eddie will ever go with 3 centre back formation, but vital, and also very disappointing when in the tunnel at half time, when you could see there was going to be a bit of shoving and a bit of a conversation happening about the sending off. Dan Burn's in the middle of it. I think it was Bednarak who was trying to get in his way when Burn was trying to have a word with Brereton Diaz. Very disappointing that the BBC feed cut away at exactly the right moment where we wanted to see the real action happening.
Yeah, well, I've got to say I'm very disappointed with Match of the Day as well, because I stayed up. I was absolutely knackered. I wanted to go to bed. I stayed up for Match of the Day because I want to see Sean Longstaff's tackle on Diaz, and it didn't show it, and I was raging. Didn't show it.
It didn't show that. They didn't show the tunnel pictures. Which it's still, we've seen the game, we want to see the sideshow as well.
Exactly.
In the tunnel.
What I did enjoy about that though was you watch Diaz walk off, and he walks straight into the middle of 4 Southampton teammates. He's not walking in there by himself. Jason Tyndall waits, just has a little word as he goes in, and then you've got Dan Burn in the middle of it, and then you watch Sean Longstaff come in. He must be the last player off the pitch for Newcastle, and he must jump up about 4 or 5 Southampton players to get right in the middle of it. And do you know what? Like, we never really want to see that kind of action on the pitch. It's not a good example for kids and what have you. But when it does happen, and you see your team come together, I mean, I enjoyed Alexander Isak's little shoulder movement, but I just enjoyed the whole team pulling together as one. And fighting for the cause, and that was missing slightly last season. I'm not saying they weren't fighting for the badge and fighting for each other, but there was something kind of missing. It didn't feel together as much, and I really enjoyed watching everyone kind of saying, you know what, you pick on him, you pick on all of us, and it just felt like the Newcastle United of 2 years ago.
Yeah, that kind of stuff like feels a bit old school. And the old school, if one person threw a punch, everyone had to be in there protecting their teammates. But that's what teams were and are. You look after your mate. If you think your mate's been conned and got a red card because someone's conned the ref, you're furious about it. And when there's been tackles or niggles off the ball, then yes, you're a team and you've got to show it. And if you've got to get in the way, even if you're protecting your mate from a fight actually happening and shoving and punches being thrown or high hands, you get in there and you protect him. And that's what a team's about. And it feels like, from another age, like 20 years ago, when, the managers would actively encourage it. Now they just let it happen quietly because it's instilled in the players, and it's a bit more subtle than an actual on-field brawl these days. But it's good to see that sort of thing still happens in the tunnel, and that players stand up for their teammates and use a bit of intimidation tactics to say, you're on our patch, you've conned the ref, we think you've conned the ref, and we're not standing for it. And Southampton, with the 50,000 Newcastle fans there, the more you can be like that and have Joelinton doing what he does on the pitch and verbally intimidating, just being a horrible team to play against and showing that you're all together, that's got to have a psychological effect on the opposition. And it probably did when Newcastle hung on for the win eventually.
You could see Diaz smiling after that Longstaff tackle. He was trying to laugh it off. He definitely looked rattled. Well, but also what was good to see was in the moments that VAR was looking through the red card, Joelinton went straight for the fourth official, and he was right in his face.
Yeah,
you had Jason Tindall just pushing him away, because as much as you want that passion and that aggression, you've also got to have someone switched on, because there's no good Joelinton getting booked 20 minutes, 25 minutes on the clock, because then that really holds him back for what he can do for the rest of the game. So it was good to see that controlled aggression in the win, and Jason Tindall just saying, look, get away now, you're going to get yourself booked, because it would have been a bad yellow card to pick up. But yeah, a bit of fireworks, always good.
I also think, just before you go on about that passion point, I was watching Eddie Howe on the touchline as well, and I think that's probably, in terms of disputing decisions and getting really into the game and and kind of feeling the game, I think that was the most animated I've seen Eddie Howe for many a game, possibly ever, on the touchline. He was, appealing for things. He was throwing his hands up. Usually Eddie Howe's like, I'm not going to get involved. We've got an example to set for kids, and I'm not going to be the one who disputes stuff with the ref. But he was getting involved, so that was quite good to see, and kind of just showed the desperation and the will to win of the whole setup. So I quite liked it from Eddie. So.
Yeah, good to see. Brian says Gordon was well short of present. He barely jogging at half time. I think he might mean fitness there. Peter says Anthony Orange is back from his holidays. Peter says Big Dan Burn is a good centre-back, tall, strong, and wants it more. We've got Andy saying, how about Bird's Eye View for the name of the show that you're going to be heading up in a few weeks' time, Simon?
I did a column called Bird's Eye View for the Courier student newspaper at Newcastle University about 30 years ago. So we might have to resurrect Bird's Eye View. Very good.
I'll get in touch with the union, check it's not copyrighted. Leon says, my view is that Guehi is never worth over £50 million. If you want to know what we think, Leon, just jog back into the show and you'll find out on that question. One of the big decisions that we spoke about last week, Simon, and that everyone was speaking about, was Kieran Trippier or Tino Livramento. You called it. You said he'll remain loyal to Tino. He did do. How do you think he did?
I thought he was... well, early on, there was kind of a bit of targeting of him, and there were a few moments where they got in behind on the right, on his side. But overall, when they made it all compact and they were soaking up the pressure, I thought he did really well. And there are some really good blocks he got in there, like really crucial blocks. One virtually on the line, they cleared off the line. So I thought he did quite well defensively. I mean, obviously, we don't know the reason for picking Trippier would be to just shuffle the defense across and have Trippier bombing up on the right wing, adding to the attack. And he got, how many assists did Trippier get last year? It was like easily double figures, 10. Yeah. So he is going to be a big miss assist wise if they don't play Kieran Trippier. I mean, Eddie has got a good excuse to explain it to Trippier now, in that he's back from Euro duty. He's only had a few weeks. He's getting older, a bit older now. He's not as young as the ones coming back from international duty. So he's probably giving him a couple of weeks before he gets a game. Maybe next week, midweek in the cup, Trippier will start. I thought that I was having doubts about what I said on the podcast last week, and I thought, no, he will bring Trippier back. And I thought if he doesn't, that might indicate that he's going to sell him. So the long-term choice is now Tino Livramento, and if someone comes in for Trippier in the next week or so, they'll sell him. So I'm wondering if, despite Eddie Howe saying he doesn't want to sell, whether that is kind of a factor as well, and they don't want to sell Trippier. But if someone comes in the next week and a half, maybe they will, because they've made their long-term decision in Tino Livramento. So it's an interesting one, Trips. I mean, he was in the reception and didn't look too damn beat, but I'm damn sure that he would rather be playing than, people don't see this, but when they've all gone home from the match, but we're still hanging around in the stadium, and when St James's Park is empty, if you've been a substitute and you've not played more than like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, all the subs who haven't played are hauled out back onto the St James's Park pitch, and it looks like a soul-destroying kind of thing to have to do. But they've got to do laps and laps and laps and laps of the pitch. They've got to do the strides, the sprints, all timed by the fitness coach, so that they've done a workout on the Saturday and they can have Sunday off. And doing that as your job on a Saturday instead of playing is kind of soul-destroying, but necessary for players. And it's one of those punishments that a substitute has got to do. And I don't think Trippier, England's right back, will be wanting to do that too many times this season as a substitute.
No, I can't imagine he would do. And I think that's what a lot of people will be asking now, is it a hint when it comes to Kieran Trippier's future that he didn't start against Southampton? Or is that just reading too much into it? Do you think it was literally, as you said there, you've just come back from the Euros, you're probably not match fit? Or do you think it might be leading towards his exit?
I'm erring towards it. Well, if I'm Eddie Howe, I want to keep Kieran Trippier and I want to keep my squad together, and he'll be of use. Even if he's not your first choice, he could still end up playing 25 games if someone gets injured or whatever. If I'm Kieran Trippier and I've got that challenge and there's one last big move in me and I'm current England right back and I played in the Euros and kind of have a new experience somewhere else. I'm just thinking, if I was Kieran Trippier, and you can get a 3 or 4 year deal somewhere else. He's 31 now, is he? You might want to try something else if you get a pay rise out of it and you get a new experience. I don't know. If I'm Eddie Howe, I want to keep him, even if I'm not playing him. I just want to keep everyone together and have all those options there. I'm not going to give any ground on that. If I'm Kieran Trippier, maybe I'm looking. I'm thinking, keep my options open. I'm looking for another move.
And maybe for the club as well, they think he's out of contract next summer. If someone comes in with a £10 million bid, they're thinking better to cash in now, especially if the manager's not going to use him as first team choice. So we'll wait and see what happens on that. I don't know if you saw, Simon, before the game, the queues around the club shop, massive queues to get in, and the queue around the Stack was back past the metro station. First day of the season at home, absolutely fantastic to see. Both venues, for want of a better phrase, packed out, queues around. I mean, that's a fantastic start when it comes to that commercial drive.
It is. I mean, the Stack's all very nice and kind of a nice place for people to meet, but I don't think that's going to solve Newcastle's financial fair play problems. I mean, it's good that they're using the land and creating a focal point. I hope it's not hitting the established bars around town too much who've been there and got big overheads to pay. So yeah, but that was good to see. It's kind of a focal point, and it jollies along the atmosphere nicely. And also, I mean, we do feel that the deal with Adidas, which Newcastle have struck, there's various elements have come out in court cases that it's actually very dependent. The money Newcastle make is very dependent on how many shirts they actually sell. So the more shirts they sell, the more money goes into the coffers rather than just a straight fee. So the incentive is there for fans, if they're going to buy a shirt, to buy it off Newcastle and help the club out there. So that's why people are going to the club shop, and a big club at Newcastle needs a club shop that's thriving to get those shirts out, advertising the club and making it a big deal around Europe and around the world.
Will not be long as well until the new stores open, so it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. Of course, Darren Eales made it on stage at the Stack as well and sang a bit of a song, which the fans absolutely loved. And then inside the stadium,
did they love it? They did. A lot of fans loved it. a lot of fans are going, this is Shearer's chief exec of a top 6 club who, would you get the Man City guys? I mean, look, it's Darren Eales showing his personality, and we can't complain about that. That's a good thing. And it's being at one with the fans. It's man at the top of the club being at one with fans. Let's be charitable. And I don't think he was a very good singer, though.
No, but then any of us. But he just seems to get lost in it, doesn't he? I mean, when the kit launch, the home kit came out, he came down of his own accord, no cameras following him about, and just went around and shook the hand of everyone who had been there since 4 or 5 in the morning. And you just think, that's him doing that again Saturday. That's just him, and like you say, his personality coming out. Okay, to some it might not look great, but I think I think that most fans were quite happy to see that, and they'll be all for that. But inside the stadium, there was a message for Amanda Staveley and Mehrdad Qadusi, of course, former Corners, no longer with the club, which said thank you. And then there's a separate banner which said we still have wild dreams. And it had a picture of Newcastle United with some of the players lifting the domestic trophies, it was a lovely display by War Flags, and a lovely message as well to the Corners, or the former Corners.
Yeah, well, the War Flags do Newcastle proud all the time, and the people have fund that and put the hours in to spread the flags around the stadium. It's a massive job, and you see them afterwards when we're doing the interviews, collecting them in and planning the next one. It really creates an atmosphere in Newcastle, and a lot of clubs try to copy that, but Newcastle is kind of the biggest and best display out there, and I think it really works, and it really is part of the match day experience. Now you wonder what banner they're going to put up, and they've said thank you to the Corners. That's great. I mean, that might not get used again if she buys another club or funds the purchase of another club, Tottenham or whoever, but yeah, we do. It does. And when a player, I mean, imagine being a player and jogging out at St James's Park, and then they've made a banner for you, and it's a surprise, and it's your birthday, or you've had 100 appearances, whatever the occasion. There's a banner for that player. That really connects a player to the crowd, and must really, swell their heart and their pride for playing for the club. So it's all about players feeding off the crowd, and the crowd feeding off the players, and it's like a mutual thing, which lifts the club another level and lifts the atmosphere and lifts performance levels. And when it's quiet and no one's really connecting with anyone, it doesn't work. And Eddie Howe and the whole club knows that, and to have that kind of link. And that's what Darren Eales is trying to create as well when he's singing songs, is to create a link and not be an aloof chief exec, but to be living the dream. He's the man with the checkbook, but he's still living the dream and loving the atmosphere. And that's kind of a really good thing to have at all levels of the club.
I remember one of the members of War Flags telling me a tale that they put a display on against Wolves, and one of the subs had come out and just turned to one of the fans behind the dugout and said, "Is it a special occasion? Is it a birth? Is there a reason for this?" And they just said, "No, it's like this every week." And that shows you the power, sets the tone, doesn't it, for hopefully good performances on the pitch. And we've got a few questions then, Simon, that were sent in. I'll just remind you guys of the email address. It's theeibwpodcast@reachplc.com. We've got Paul from Walker has asked, where was Vlachodimos on Saturday? Surely he has to be Newcastle's number 2, but wasn't there. And we've got a few people live watching on YouTube as well, asking where he was, and Martin Dubravka was on the bench, and what's happening with Dubravka. Is he going to go? Is he staying? Can you shed any light on those two questions there?
Well, I think the keeper I think Martin Dubravka is the number 2. I think the Greek keeper was part of, I mean, it's strange. We're gonna have to explore this one more with Eddie Howe, maybe for the cup game, and where there's other issues have settled down. In that, it's a strange signing. It looks like one of those trade-offs for selling Elliot Anderson, where you've got to buy the keeper. They didn't really need another keeper, but it balances everyone's books, and it's one of those strange deals which is happening now, which is maybe exploiting loopholes too strong, but it's kind of one of those trade-offs that happened with the Elliot Anderson deal. And by all accounts, the book value that they paid for him is quite high, shockingly high. But I don't think he's a number 2. I mean, he wasn't really playing at Forest either, was he? So it's a really strange deal. I mean, it's bizarre, and we need to look into it further. And I don't think he's a number 3. He's a number 3. I mean, I'd keep Dubravka as your number 2 because he's got the experience of big games, the Euros, a lot, and Nicky Pope's your number 1. and they've now got 5 keepers. But then I saw Chelsea's squad list just before, and they've got 6 keepers. So that's pretty mad as well. So yeah, John Ruddy and Marc Guehi and the Greek guy. I must learn to say his name if he gets in the team. Can you say it, Andrew?
Vlachodimos.
Thank you. That's perfect. I'll memorize that. But I don't think he's going to play much.
Interesting. Well, we've got a lot of people complimenting Pope's performance on Saturday. We've got David here saying, love Pope's save in the second half. I doubt that Dubravka could have saved that. I think that's one of the reasons we won was due to the organisation and presence of Nick Pope. And like Joelinton, having him back is going to be crucial for a successful season because Newcastle United really missed the likes of Pope and Joelinton last season through injury. We've got Steve who has written in and says, love the show, guys. Great for Newcastle United to start the season with a win. What did you make of Harvey Barnes' cameo? Seemed to inject much needed legs and a bit of pace. Can he have a good season?
Yeah, he's one of the players who I think a lot of people are really hopeful to come on. His goals record is good. His assist record is good. And yeah, if Anthony Gordon's not on his game, he can come on. Even like that 2 seasons ago when they got 4th, the front line would just blitz it for 60 minutes, and then they would have the substitutes to make on the energy, on the energy players, the players who've done all those intense sprints, not just attacking but in the off the ball performance as well. So Eddie Howe had the option of changing people playing flat out and then being changed. And I think Harvey Barnes, even if he's not starting every week, but he might start some games, but even if he's not, coming on and having 30 minutes massive impact and adding fresh legs and being really good is a huge asset for Newcastle. If he's coming off the bench, he might well start. I mean, who knows? But I mean, they could play Gordon across on the right. We'll have to see what the plans are for that and if they sign anyone on the right wing. But yeah, hopefully he can get goals because Newcastle need goals from everywhere else as well as Isak this year.
We've got Liam asking, do we just have to accept that Newcastle's stuck with Miguel Almiron until at least January? And if so, why are they asking too much for him?
Well, I think they're asking like 20 million-ish. The Charlotte from the MLS, the team were nowhere near being able to afford that, like 5-10 million. So, what would Eddie Howe rather like to raise 8 million for the balance sheet of the club, or would he want to keep Miguel Almiron and work on his game? He's never any trouble. He's always smiling. He seems to give his all. And I think Howe's spoken about bringing refining that form of the season where he got 11 goals and was red hot for at least half a season, refining that mystery of what happened to Almiron that year. How could he finish? How could he volley it in from 20 yards? And I think Howe wants to find that. If they're not going to let him go, then they'll work with him and give him a lot of love and kind of improve him. I mean, that's all he can do if a player's left there. It goes back to that thing of Eddie Howe wants as many options as possible, and just finding someone with a hot streak. Almiron might find it for 10 games, and it could be the difference.
Fingers crossed he does. The final question then is, we've got one from Stevie who's emailed in and asks, we saw Bryan Mbeumo start for Brentford. Surely Newcastle can go after a cheap alternative to Guehi and use the rest of the money to go after him.
And he's going to be cheap after his performance the other day. Yeah, I mean, it depends what you call cheap. You're not going to get him for 20 million. Starting price for him is probably 40 million. I don't know what it is, but it's not going to be cheap. He's an experienced Premier League player. He's had a lot of good games. I've seen him play and score very well against other clubs. So, you can't just waltz into Brentford now. He's had a good first day of the season and say, well, we'll have him. I mean, like I said before, Newcastle will have the right wing targets. They'll all be researched. Salaries, stats, attitudes, what kind of people they are. They'll have the list of which they can work down. And Bryan Mbeumo scoring a brilliant goal against Marc Guehi will not be influencing that long-term research which you expect has gone on.
With the transfer market, though, if they sign Guehi, let's say for 70 million, do you really see Newcastle United managing to go after someone on the right wing? Because again, you look at the options, whoever it is, you're still going to have to be parting with the best part of 30-35 million for, I don't know, for whoever, that's at the very least. So have they got the money to do that if they're not going to sell Trippier and they're not going to sell Almiron?
I think at that point, if they were really going to pursue a right wing, if they got Guehi for 70 odd, if they were going to pursue a right wing, I think they'd then have to be moving people out. I don't think there's room for like 110 million quid's worth of spending without anyone of any significance leaving. So they would have to start looking at the fringe players, the players who have got a year on their contract who they could cash in. And there's a lot of them, as we discussed last week, 7 first teamers and 15 in all, I think. So there'll be a bit of an urgency and a bit of a push to raise some cash rather than it all having to happen in January at that point, I think. So, I mean, who knows? Well, this is the pressure time. You'd much rather have your business done. And every day that ticks off to the 1st of September, the pressure cranks up. People know Newcastle are really desperate, not really desperate, but really in need of to push on and prove themselves players again. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the shoes of the deal makers at the minute, and being negotiating hard while really wanting a player, pretending that you can walk away, but going back with the 5 million more. But hey, we can walk. That's a tough kind of charade to play off. And I think Staveley spoke about it. Or someone from the club did recently about how really those negotiations are like, where you really earn your money. Going to Everton, we desperately want Gordon, but here's 30 million, and having to be pushed up. And it'd be great to get video and film of that all happening. It'd be fascinating.
It certainly would. I'd love to know how it works, the whole back and forth, but not a job that I'd want myself. Just to finish off then, just quickly, Simon, any other takeaways from the opening weekend? Any other conclusions or verdicts or wild predictions you want to shout out, having seen the likes of Everton fall apart, or maybe Fulham not managed to beat Manchester United? I mean, I thought Everton were pretty poor. I thought Fulham weren't much better. They just couldn't seem to hold on to the ball. Man City, Liverpool look a little bit dangerous. I mean, it's hard, isn't it, to come to a verdict and a conclusion after one game, but
yeah, some of the main teams, including Newcastle, they got the 3 points and they're kind of on track. Chelsea, all that money spent, they're going to be fascinating. They could get a points deduction. They've got 40 odd players. They've got like 4 players in every position. How are they going to sustain that? Are they going to have a fire sale in the last week? I mean, what is going on there? Chelsea is a fascinating read. I love one of my colleagues to get stuck into that and explain how they could possibly have all those players and still look like a bunch of strangers on the pitch. And Everton, like we highlighted it last week, of the established clubs in the Premier League, they're the ones you really fear for at the moment. Bit of turmoil, big stadium move next year. They really don't want to go down when they're going to get a big stadium coming on tap. So they're quite kind of fascinating. So that there are a few alarm bells ringing elsewhere. Newcastle have got their win, their 3 points. Things settle a little bit without getting complacent, and pretty satisfied. I don't know, satisfying they didn't get Guehi. Satisfying result, but with progress needed urgently this week. I think that's what we can say.
There we go. Well, we'll wait and see what happens. Thank you to Simon for filling in for Aaron Stokes here on the Monday show. This has been the Everything is Black and White podcast. Do give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Hit subscribe to the channel as well. On our audio channel, please leave us a rating and review. Don't know what that noise is. We're having technical issues. Bounces that. That's you. Okay. We're drawing it to a close. Simon, thank you. And head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. And look forward to Simon's return in a couple of weeks for the potential bird's eye view. We might take that title. Yeah, we'll confirm later on though. But
let's make a logo for it. Let's smash like and subscribe and that kind of thing.
He's learning. Cheers, Simon. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. And we'll catch you guys very soon.